This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Sunday night. We're doing it on a Sunday night. It's March 17th. The Wolves are in the middle of a 2-game set in Utah against the Jazz, and my guest for today's show is in Utah. He was there on Saturday night when the Wolves won by 19. In a game that was fueled by Anthony Edwards, had 31, 10, and 5. It's another big night for Mike Conley, who had 25 himself. Naz Reid had to do his Naz Reid shape-shifting into a center again with no Rudy Gobert, and he had 22, 12, and 5. And Chris, you will be there Monday night in Utah as well. How are you? What's up? Happy Sunday.
Things are good. You know, the weather has been great this whole trip. Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, can't complain. Everything's going all right.
It's freezing here.
Is it really? Oh, I hate to hear that.
It was nice. It was nice. Like, I mean, how long have you been on the road for?
Since last Saturday.
Yeah.
So this is day 8 on the road. Yeah.
You might get some.
It's a good thing I don't have a family or anything like that. Like nobody misses me.
Oh,
it's just me.
I miss you.
I miss all your smiling faces. We'll see y'all on Tuesday.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's coming up. Like this was the, as I think Finch kind of put a couple times, like the All-Star break, another All-Star break in a way. This break they had on the West Coast. How many days of practice did they get in there between?
Honestly, they only practiced one day. Practiced one day. So they played on Tuesday. They took Wednesday off. They practiced on Thursday. And then Friday was just an early travel day to Salt Lake City. They didn't practice either.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say that they're not like working out and, guys aren't getting some work in.
I'm fine with the idea of also just rest at this point.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what they need, especially with the way that they kind of started out of the gate with all those back-to-backs. So yeah, no, just some good time to, be in one place for a little while. They opted to spend that break in Los Angeles and not Salt Lake City. There's a stunner. So they, like I said, just only one practice, and honestly, it was a quick practice too. Okay. I want to say it was only maybe a half hour to 40 minutes of a practice on Thursday, and that was about it. So it's that time of year. It's like you don't need a ton of time, a ton of work, at this time of the season.
So let's get into that game. I don't know. There's been a handful of these, or 2 now, I guess. No Cat, no Rudy games, and you kind of sit down for those games, and you're like, all right, how relevant is this for anything outside of getting the wins necessarily?
Just getting a win, right? Exactly.
To stay in the mix at the top of the West. But it is just it's jarring, right? It's such a completely different style of play without Rudy Gobert on the floor, and obviously you don't have Karl-Anthony Towns. Your bigs go from, Cat, Rudy, Naz to Naz and Luka, Garza, and it's just, I think for Naz in particular, it's such a change for him. He really has to stop being a wing, which he's been pretty much all season, and shift into being a center. I think it kind of starts there. It kind of just starts with, all right, you don't have Karl-Anthony Towns' points. You don't have the Rudy Gobert pick and roll weapon. So you need other offensive guys to step up. And what I think we have learned is a lot of that, or most of that, is on Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, and then Mike Conley's kind of been an addition to that too. Again, all 3 of those guys stepped up in a big way. I think was at 78 points between the 3 of them. We could talk about Mike and Naz, but the real story here, I think, is what Rudy or not, what Ant has been able to do in the no Cat time here. You wrote about that for today, or I think it's going to be in Monday's paper, that Ant is averaging 31.2 points per game, and Cat's now 5-game absence. He just had 31 on Saturday in Utah, 31, 10, and 5. He also had 3 blocks, 3 steals. Thought he was trusting the pass. Hit 5 of his 7 threes, which he hadn't really been hitting threes in the other 4 games before that. Had at least 3 or 4 and ones in that game. I mean, he is just really leveled up into, kind of swelling up to fill the hole that Cat has vacated while he's hurt here. I mean, what's just standing out to you about Ant?
I kind of asked him that last night. I was like, are you doing this like kind of on purpose? Or are you doing it just because that's just how it's going right now? And
Right.
Ant's answer was basically like, I feel like I play this way when Carl's out there a lot. That he's not really, he doesn't feel like he's playing much differently. But I just think it's every possession now that he's doing this. Like,
Right.
Maybe he doesn't play much differently stylistically or, when he does attack, but like just the sheer volume of possessions, I think that he is the guy, and kind of initiating everything has just gone up naturally without Carl. So that's why
I looked it up before this game, and in the time that Cat had been out, he was 5th in the NBA in usage. It had gone up from 31% to 35%. I mean, he's up there with the Jalen Brunsons, Luka. Like, that is the change.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue.
Yeah, so he's eating up a little bit more usage. And yeah, it's just he's having to do it almost every possession now, where it's not like, this is the Cat possession or what have you, right? So, this is what he did last year too. This is what happened when Carl went down last year, and eventually Ant just kind of became the everything of the offense. D'Lo was still here at the time, and there would be nights where D'Lo would go off, but there would be nights where D'Lo struggled. And so where were the Wolves getting offense from? And it was Ant almost all the time. Earned an all-star berth doing that.
Sure.
And I think he's shown that he's more than capable of doing this, of being, the fulcrum every time down the floor. I think that's what's most encouraging about these 5 games so far, is that he's up to the challenge and he wants to win these games. They know how important this stretch of the season is to try and get as high a seed as they possibly can. And yeah, we're seeing him grow before our eyes again. Like, he just keeps getting better and better, not just season to season, but within a season as well.
You asked Finch about Ant and kind of stepping up in Cat's absence. I thought these Ants were interesting. I'll play that clip here quick.
We talk a lot about his consistency, trying to pile these kind of nights.
Yeah.
It seems like he's been doing that more
Yes.
late. Is this maybe a step for him, having these kind of games come in a row like this?
Yeah, I thought to start the game he was aggressive. Then he got into a little bit of holding, and then I thought he kind of lost his rhythm as a result of that. But in the second half, he was really good. Everything was quick, everything was decisive. Got to his shot, he got to his spots, he got to the rim. He made the right kickouts. In transition, he picked up the pace a little bit. Yeah, so that's the way he's got to continue to play. There's going to be plenty of opportunities where you do get slowed down, but you don't want to unnecessarily slow yourself down.
Whether it's purposeful or subconsciously, he kind of did this last year when Carl went down. It seemed like he took his game up another notch under an all-star appearance. Does he maybe sense the moment for you guys right now with Carl out that he's got to take his game up another notch?
I'm sure he does. It's a question better suited for him. I do think also the aggressiveness with the ball in his hands, a little bit more, kind of more often, or early. Like he and Cat don't have to share it as much. Of course, with Cat not being here, and that's been a rhythm that's been somewhat inconsistent for us at times. This year, right now, Ann is aggressive, and we have a ton of spacing out there right now too, particularly with Rudy not being on the floor, so it opens up all kinds of things. So, he has a guy. He has. What I'm pleased in the last 2 games is he's really been efficient from the floor. Above 50%. So.
I think, Chris, it kind of makes sense in my head that the adjustment into playing without Cat would be less of an adjustment for Ant than maybe the adjustment will be when Cat is reintegrated, right? Because in this right now, it's just like, do more, right? Play faster. You don't have to, share the ball as much or really give away possessions. He still needs to be a playmaker. He still needs to do those things, but it is kind of it makes some sense in my head now that I've been watching it. That is a natural progression of like, just do more. There's fewer restraints. I thought that was apparent right away in the Indiana game, where it was like, if you want to put your impact on the game right now or in this quarter, you can. Like, he has full license to go and do as much as kind of like his energy at a given time can give him.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the question then becomes like fatigue, both mentally and physically, and being able to just handle this sort of usage and responsibility. And I think, the game against Cleveland probably his worst game of this stretch. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that it comes on a back-to-back with travel a night after he scores 44 and, has the game-stealing block against Indiana. I think it's going to require a lot of mental energy, a lot of physical energy. He came up hobbled again last night at the end of the first half. And then, of course, he's right back out there at the start of the third quarter. But I think he's shown in playoff scenarios too in last year that, like, look, when he has to be the guy, on an every other night basis, when you're not playing a back-to-back, for instance, he can do it.
Right.
And so it's the time of year where you kind of, you throw off any concerns about fatigue or trying to play.
Well, you just can't have those like
some stuff, but
you can't have those like take the night off games that he doesn't actually take the night
off.
There was more room or license, I guess, to do that when Cat would get going. I mean, the glaring example to me is the Charlotte game there. Even before things went poorly at the beginning, he was just like, Ant would kind of like downshift in the games where Cat really had it going and empowered Cat to go do his thing. So I think about that from the fatigue standpoint of like, how necessary were those not rest games, if that makes sense? Because now there's none of that, right? And it is, I mean, pretty much, like, I think this team's losing to right now in this current iteration is losing more games than it's winning if Ant didn't play in a game, right? Like,
correct.
There is very little margin, and he makes up for so much of it right now. But yeah, I think like, fatigue's a factor. He's definitely been rolling those ankles a lot. You do counterbalance a lot of that with just being 22 years old, right? And
exactly.
Like, it seems doable. And I think, to my memory, like the schedule the rest of the way has like I mean, at once you get past this Denver game on Tuesday, it's a lot more of a normal schedule. Like, there's not going to be they lost some games in this stretch recently because it was a difficult schedule, even before they were on the road with all the back-to-backs. And then this road trip here, like, I don't know. They need Ant to keep going. And I think as long as I think fatigue's the only thing that will get in the way of it. Every single team he's the primary thing. They're putting two on the ball every single time. Like, they are doing everything to take away Anthony Edwards with Karl Anthony Towns off the floor, and he's not being taken out of the games. Like you said, the only game was Cleveland. And I guess Cleveland's probably the best defensive team they faced in that time, but I'm with you. That one felt a lot more like fatigue, reasonable and understandable fatigue, than it felt like anything else.
Yeah, that's 100%. Yeah, the schedule, they have 3 back-to-backs the rest of the season here, and 2 of them involve Denver.
Jeez.
Go figure. The schedule makers there.
I think Denver's on a back-to-back, and one of them too.
And one of them too. Yeah. Okay, so it evens out.
Kind of.
The other one is one of those home back-to-backs, I think, against like Toronto and Chicago or something like that.
Sure.
It's kind of right at the end of the season. So the schedule is going to be fairly okay the rest of the way. Like you said, kind of once they get past this set 48-hour period here, definitely have to go on a Tuesday night thinking that's just going to be a loss. Denver is going to be there resting. The Wolves are going to be flying, losing an hour in the time zone. That has schedule loss written all over it Tuesday night, especially if Rudy's not going to be able to go.
Well, will it be Phoenix? Will it be the Phoenix like flatness, or will I think about Boston too as like that one when they lost?
Well,
in
that is
Boston?
true. You know, the Boston game was, I mean, Carl played that night.
Rudy didn't.
Boston. Rudy didn't,
No.
but Carl was available, and I think Carl had a decent game that
Mhm.
particular night, if I remember.
Yeah.
So that's, and as for Rudy, he seemed to be getting better. Just kind of had a quick chat with him yesterday.
Okay.
In the locker room, said he was getting better, but like still in pain. Range of motion was an issue. So, we'll just kind of see. Just kind of wait and see.
So that's what it is. It's kind of like the idea of, like putting your hands over your head and like stretching and bending. That's where you get the sense of where he's feeling it in the ribs there.
Turning your body, like, all that stuff. So it's just a matter of time, I think, to get that healed. So it's kind of hard to put a
timetable,
put a time frame on.
He's listed as questionable for Monday's game against Utah. I don't know, like, given that is a back-to-back, right? Is it? Do you buy another day and just play the Denver game? I guess we'll see what happens.
Or do you sit them both, and because you don't play again until Friday after that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's the other thing. Rest them up for a home game on Friday against Cleveland potentially. Right. So who knows?
Let's grab our first break here. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company, and I think for the Utah game too on Monday night, you can head over to Falling Knife. But I think in particular the Denver game on Tuesday. I know schedule loss and everything like we were just saying, but I thought it'd be a fun one, right? And those I find right now to be the games that are just infinitely more valuable and interesting, of like the real tests. Like these Utah games are the survival ones, like the Denver ones, the Denver and these good teams, the Clippers. You get to a look at what I think the Wolves are going to look like in the playoffs, and opportunity to watch that with other Wolves fans, kind of get the playoff vibe in March here. So that's Falling Knife Brewing Company. I'll wait for all these games as the spring comes here and you're wanting to get out to go watch Wolves games. We're always letting you know that Falling Knife is the Wolves bar in Minneapolis. And then also quickly, today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, prizepicks.com, or the Prize Picks app. You can use the promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus. It's interesting. Like the numbers stay kind of the same, and you kind of know, like, all right, if there's no Rudy Gobert, like, what does this mean for Naz Reid? Like, I think it's these ones are kind of fun to take a look at. Like, if Naz is under 20 points again, and Rudy's not playing, I feel pretty confident that Naz Reid is going to have more than 20 points in that game. So check that out. Obviously for Wolves games or just random NBA games and all sorts of other stuff coming up on the sports schedule overall. Prize Picks is just fun, easy, cheap daily fantasy, a way to have a little something riding on the games that you are watching there. Again, that's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus. All right, Chris. Let's keep moving on to. Should we do Mike Conley next, or should we do Naz Reid next? Which one of those you want to?
Let's do Mike, because Mike had the big night.
Yeah. Well, give me that. You were there in Utah. Mm-hmm. I saw you tweeted it out, the tribute video for Mike, and then also just the stepping up, having 25 in a game that they needed him to kind of have 25 to play there. But what was it like? Yeah. What was it like?
Yeah, it was obviously a very long day for him, and
right.
Very eventful, emotional kind of day. Spent parts of 4 seasons with the Jazz. As well liked there seemingly as he is in Minnesota. And he said it's going to be a long day. Turned off his phone in the afternoon so he can get a little nap in, because he knew when he got to the arena that it was just going to be like person after person kind of coming up to him, saying hello, wishing him well, all that. And that's basically what it was, as long as I saw him, whether it was like before the game or after the game, after he comes out of the locker room, there's like people just kind of lined up to say hello to him. Like that was the kind of day that it was for Mike Conley. So I think I put in my story like probably the only part of the day that felt normal to him was maybe actually just playing.
Right.
Like actually, okay, I could play a game now for 2.5 hours and not have to deal with anything else. And he played one of his. Obviously, he set another season high, second game in a row that he set a season high for points.
Yeah,
with 25, 5 threes, 4 of them coming in the second half. And after the game, Finch said that they're using him a little more off the ball to try and help ignite his scoring. And I think a play that encapsulated that was the first play right out of the half. Mike comes around 2 screens, left wing 3, buries it. And I felt like that really I think that play just really set the tone for what they did in the second half of that
I thought the same thing too. I was interested, like listening to your post game. I watched the videos on there or whatever. And you had a couple people about that. And I was like, I thought that's where the game kind of turned. It was like Mike right away, using Mike in a different way, weaponizing the 3-point shot. And then, he had 4 threes in that quarter, 3 or 4 in that quarter. And I mean, like kind of looking like the JJ Redick type thing, right? Like running pin downs for him, flying off of it, not playing point guard. I thought that was really noteworthy.
It's great. It eases the burden on Mike a little bit because as he said, he's like you come off if you're handling the ball, you're coming off a screen. You got 12 different decisions you might have to make at one time. So playing off the ball just makes it a little easier on him to focus more on scoring when a pin down is for him. He can just focus on executing the action as best as possible, and then trying to score after that. It's like a singular mindset as opposed to trying to process 10 different things going on at one time. So maybe that's maybe a little significant change, along with him just maybe getting a little rest under his legs, and because I think the schedule out of the break affected him as much as anybody with the number of back-to-backs. But getting some rest, getting some sun in California for a couple days, maybe rejuvenate him a little bit, and they certainly he knows they need him. They know they need him. Everybody knows that they need him to score more while Cat is out. And the last 2 games are an indication. It looks like he's really rounding back into form here.
Yeah, it was like you said, season high 25 points on 5 of 8 shooting from deep after scoring 23 points against the Clippers in the last game on 5 of 8 shooting from deep. So that's over 2 games, 48 points, 10 of 16 shooting from 3, also 7 for 11 from 2. I think that kind of matters too. They need him to also be a downhill option at times, get that floater game going, particularly when he's out there and when he is running pick and roll and he is the point guard. I mean, it's been super productive and efficient play from Mike Conley, who about a week ago was saying he felt like he was running in the mud. You asked him about that. I'll drop that clip in right here.
2 games ago, you were talking about running through the mud and things like that. You followed up to 2 season highs right now. Here's coincidence or what's changed in the last week or so?
I guess I'm out the mud. Well, hey, don't listen to him, man. That's so ugly, man. Just he says you're young, Mike, and then you're having fun, you're dancing. Oh yeah, he did that on purpose. Yeah. No, I feel great. Just honestly, I think it's a perfect storm of like trying to fill in for guys like who's out, and it's giving me a good rhythm. Just be aggressive and look for your shots more. Just try to get to the paint more, get to the free throw line, and there's no coincidence I'm getting to the free throw line now more than I probably have in the last couple months. So that's always going to continue, and hopefully it helps me and everybody catch a good rhythm going into the playoffs.
Finch was saying we're using you maybe a little more as like an off-ball bird. The last couple names here, has that helped in any way to help you in terms of scoring?
I think so. I think it puts me in more of a scoring mindset when I'm running off of pin downs, and I know it's for me to shoot the ball. When I'm picking rolls, I'm thinking about 12 different options and trying to make plays and trying to get guys open. So just splitting that time a little bit more now is helping me stay aggressive offensively.
I think, Chris, it's like I can picture him in this role also once Cat is back. or when Rudy is back, right? Like, it's nice to be able to Ant can run point, right, or can kind of initiate the offense, and Mike can be the movement shooter that you're running plays for, or spacing or whatever. But if Ant, if they do start turning the ball over, if they do need to kind of slow things down and run a more structured traditional play set, well, that's easy. Just invert it, right? Go get the ball, Mike, and you can run it. Like there was so, I mean, just like thinking back over the course of the season and kind of Mike's role, like we've been saying, and Finch has been saying, and he's been saying, like wanting to shoot more all season or shoot more threes, which would make sense. He shoot well over 40%. But they needed him to kind of counteract, right? Like their biggest weakness this season, which has been, when the offense loses its structure and form and, kind of zip, then Mike needs to be the guy that puts that there. He can't be both the quarterback of the offense and the wide receiver, I guess, if you will, finishing the plays in that sort of way. So I think this is, the 2-guard thing. You're seeing it on the floor, and they're naming it. Like this is an additional thing to add to the mix.
Yeah, this is. I do wonder what it looks like when Carl is back in that way. I wonder how much of this does go away, or if he keeps playing like this. I don't know why you would want to switch back. If he starts really finishing the season strong here, so I'm, in my head, I'm thinking, like, what does this look like if Carl is back, and is Mike able to play off the attention Carl gets? Does spacing become more of an issue when you have Carl back there on the floor? It shouldn't theoretically, especially if you're maybe running some of the stuff with Kyle. Right now, but I just wonder. I wonder just how much.
No, I think you're right to say that it's not going to be seamlessly,
permanent.
But it can be additive. That's what I think this whole Cat stretch is like, what are things, whether it's this Mike at the 2, playing with more pace, like establishing things so you have them in your pocket that you weren't going to consistently when your roster. They just don't play fast when Carl and Rudy are on the floor. So they don't have a lot of like things to go off of. Well, now you're going to have 25 games where you didn't play with this, or a handful of games without Rudy too. And as we said at the top, like watching that Wolves game last night doesn't look like a Wolves game normally, but there can be an advantage in that. And like learning different styles and ways to play to add into your just bag once you get to the playoffs. And I think this is, I think Mike and his play in this time, a more aggressive Mike is one of those things. And then Naz also, like at the 5 and playing as more of the primary picker, the pick and pop role and all of that. Like they've added more ways to play with Naz Reid kind of being forced into playing him at the 5. But in those times, you're seeing the team get out and pay it with more pace and out in transition a little bit more. I looked it up. It was their 7th highest transition frequency game of the season.
Okay.
And I looked at it, I just sorted by highest transition games. Their 11 highest transition frequency games, the ones they've got out the most in transition, they're 11-0 in those games this season.
Well, there you go.
It makes sense. I mean, it doesn't feel like it fits a Cat and Rudy roster, but it does fit a Naz, an Ant, and Jaden, and some of those other guys too. So I think yeah.
I think also them getting out in transition is also probably telling you that the defense is probably playing really well that particular night too, more often than not. So I can see why it would be 11-0 in those instances, because the defense is probably playing lights out in some of those games.
Right. Let's talk about Naz a little bit. This is a very different job, like we said before, and I think it looked a little rough in the first few games, or the certainly the first game without Rudy when Naz had to play the 5. The Lakers were just kind of picking apart Naz and pick and roll coverage and the whole team there. But I feel like he's started getting back into remembering how to sort of play the 5 on both sides of the floor. I thought he looked pretty, just like comfortable in that role. He also like did more centery type things, couple block shots, 12
Yep.
rebounds. Again, playing in the pick and pop rather than just kind of the guy you find for threes on the swing or whatever. Like
Mhm.
it seems like he's kind of found a little bit more of a rhythm at the 5. And while when this team is fully constituted, he's not going to play the 5. That doesn't mean you can't still go run a high pick and pop with Naz Reid and have Carl into the corner or Rudy in the dunk, whatever.
Right.
I think there's some things with what Naz is doing in this opportunity that he has of just more minutes every night will allow him, again, once his role maybe goes back down to 28 minutes a night or something in the playoffs, that there's, again, more things that he can go to. I thought I mean, he's just been really encouraging in this stretch. And again, 22, 12 and 5, 2 blocks, 2 steals for Naz on Saturday night.
Yeah, he looked great. And I thought the part of his game last night that stuck out to me was his willingness to rebound and really, really box out, made a concerted effort to make sure Utah didn't kill them on the offensive glass last night. I thought that was really encouraging because, throughout his career, I think that's been one of the knocks on Naz is the rebounding could use a little help, or he could get better in that area. So I think really seeing him dial it in that area of the game specifically was one of the most encouraging things about last night, especially coming off of a game in which Anthony Davis had 25 rebounds or something like that. So obviously a huge point of emphasis with him, I'm sure, as they were discussing kind of playing the 5 again last night. Obviously it certainly helps. We don't have Anthony Davis on the other side of the court, but Utah.
He kept Walker Kessler off the glass pretty much.
Exactly. I mean, Walker Kessler will get offensive boards against you.
Big guy, yeah.
And so, I thought that was really encouraging. His night on the glass, I thought, was very good for them last night. Definitely in addition to the scoring and the 5 assists and everything else, but very consistent effort on that end of the court.
I did like the assists. He had a couple of nice dimes to Jaden, who's kind of struggled again. Jaden was in foul trouble, but I don't know if it was at least 2 of his assists were to Jaden, and that was the one really nice dunk Jaden had in a crowd on the Jazz, and another sort of just cutting to the basket. Naz found him the right hand zip pass through the middle of the lane there, and Naz has a passing game in his game, and that's something when you turn up his usage as they're doing now, I think you're going to be able to see more of that. And up the top of my head, I don't feel like we saw that as much in the first few games Cat was out, but I think that's part of the answer. And I think Naz being that type of passer is maybe part of the answer for Jaden getting back into more of an offensive rhythm there. Naz isn't just getting his 20 a night now that he's there. He's doing other things in addition, like we said, the rebounding and the passing as well.
Yeah. And I wonder if I haven't really asked him about this. I wonder just what his mindset is, if he has a different mindset, when he knows he's going to be playing in a situation like this, when he knows he's going to be playing 38, 40 minutes, maybe, in a game like that, maybe he's not looking to score right away because he's not the microwave bench scorer role. He could settle into a game more. He could make more. I try to maybe ask him about that after the game tomorrow night, if Rudy doesn't play again, because it definitely seemed like he was making a concerted effort to be more of a playmaker than maybe he typically is when he's coming off the bench. As for Jaden, he started off really, really rocky last night, but got a couple layups, thanks in part to Naz, as you said, on kind of one of those plays, and then hit a couple shots last night. So, we'll see if he can work out of this funk that he's in right now. It's the threes that he had to start the night, he was wide open on the first 2 shots he had were wide open threes, nobody near him. It was almost like those shots were you're too open, because it gives you time to think about it and just how open you are that you should hit these shots. and then he just didn't come close on either of them.
Yeah.
So I we'll see if, and they made a concerted effort early to try and get him going, but it just wasn't. Fetch wasn't happening last night in that regard early on in that game.
It's interesting, we're talking about like, okay, if it is a game where Cat and Rudy are out, like I said at the top, is like, you're looking for Ant and Naz it becomes an Ant and Naz game, and then you hope that maybe Mike Conley and Nikhil Alexander-Walker can throw in like 4 threes for you, right? Like that's kind of the hopeful way that plays out. But like, I didn't even say Jaden at that time. And it's not that McDaniels can't be that. He just hasn't really shown any signs of that in this. Like, I mean, he's getting a couple more shots. He's playing like a little bit more without Cat, but it isn't like in the way that Ant is like sort of naturally taken the extra water on like a sponge, and Naz has as well. Like Jaden's hasn't been able to do the same thing yet. And yeah, I think some of it is per usual kind of a frustration, right? A mental sort of funk with it. He looked really frustrated after he picked up, I think it was his 5th foul early in the 4th quarter, like did one of those, like grabs the jersey, like he's thinking about ripping it and just goes and sits down. But yeah, that's the one thing that, you're hoping comes around in these final 15 or so games of the season is, can we get a couple of, 16, 18 point Jaden McDaniels games where he's able to hit some threes and find them on cuts there. But I'm not anticipating it, right? Like I'm not anticipating that is going to be, and I don't feel like they're relying on him right now to be one of those answers. The answers for replacing the Cat offense are pretty clearly Ant and Naz, and then 3-point shooting from the surrounding guys. I'm curious what you thought about Luka Garza.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've gotten the Luka Garza experience. I think he's filled in capably in the ways that they've needed him to. No surprises, I guess, is probably what I would say is like, offense, he's going to be aggressive. He's clearly got the talent and the ability to score. Defensively, it's inconsistent. That's all. And he's prone to a high foul rate, as we know. So it's kind of what you expect. Right. But when you're in this position, you have to give guys run, and I think it's been fine. I think it's been fine.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, at that point when you don't have Rudy and Cat, you need to have a second center. Yep. And your options become, Luka Garza or maybe Kyle Anderson, small ball at the 5. And they've now twice chosen Luka Garza to be that answer there. And it's been short shifts. It's small. It's like they're going to play. They played Naz, 35 minutes, and they played Luka 13. And I think 2 of Luka's 13 minutes were that garbage time at the end of the game. Right. These little like 5 or 6 minute stretches that they're having, just literally the time Naz needs to rest and back out there. And it's a stopgap, and the stopgap actually stops it if Luka's scoring, because if he's not scoring, you can just it is a jarring difference of what the defense looks like.
His second shift was better than the first.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because he had more offense, and they were just playing better in the second half as a team up and down the roster. So second shift was better than the first, because the first shift, I think he was like 2 for 7 or something like that.
I wrote down he was 0 for 4 in the first half. 0 for 4.
That feels. What was it? 0 for 4. Okay, because I think I remember looking up at one point and he was 2 for 7 in the game. Yeah, that's just kind of what I remember. So it's very possible. But yeah, I mean, that first half was just kind of choppy all around too. Right. Not just him, but the whole team shot terribly. The 36% or something like that in the first half, and then what was it, close to 60 in the second. Just of rusty coming out, and everybody was rusty, including him. So because they actually had 3 days off where, kind of threw them out of rhythm, at least initially. But yeah, I don't, I know the fan base, loves to try and get more minutes for him somehow, some way. I'm not seeing where that's going to come from when Rudy is back, and especially when Carl gets back.
Yeah, well, to me, Chris, it's just like he's not going to be the G League high level scorer unless the offense is being run through him, right?
Yeah.
And like if it is for 5 or 6 minutes, like once per half, that he's playing 5 minutes, I think like you almost need to go to him and be like, all right, for these 5 minutes, we're using you over and over and over again, so he has the chance for his offense to outweigh the defense. Because I think it can, but it's just hard to go from being like a DNP guy into like now you're playing, and when you're playing for those 12 minutes, you are the like number 1 or number 2 option. But I think he would play better if that were the case. He just doesn't have like the game of a 4th or 5th option. He just doesn't unless it's just spotting up on the perimeter, which he can do. And maybe that probably is ultimately the answer, because you don't necessarily want to be giving Luka Garza, usage over Mike Conley or something like that in those times. But it's just interesting. It's interesting to like, rather than just the idea of garbage time Luka Garza, we've seen him play a couple times, and it's, yeah, as you said from the top there, it's kind of what we would have expected. The last thing I had done, you wrote a cool piece about TJ Warren earlier in the week. Maybe that was after the practice in LA or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
I just introduced myself to him one time briefly, like in Indiana. I haven't really had the chance to like do interviews with him or anything like that. I didn't watch that interview, but the quotes were kind of awesome. Just to kind of about what his story has been sort of this last year or so. He just seems genuinely really grateful to be back in the league. Tell us about this story.
That was basically, I talked to him after the practice in Los Angeles, and about 5 minutes or so, and he was talking about how he hadn't he made a promise to himself not to get on an airplane again unless it was with a team. So it meant like no vacations or anything like that, like just keep working back home in Raleigh, North Carolina. And yeah, so the first time he set foot on a plane was to go to Indiana, because he drove from Raleigh to Minneapolis.
It's crazy,
which is a crazy drive. Like, why would anybody ever do that?
No planes, man. No planes.
No planes. He made that commitment to himself. Right. But honestly, like just talking to him, like the kind of the awe of the moment and like the kind of can you believe this sort of factor definitely shone through. Of like I was just on my couch playing video games like 2 weeks ago, and now we're playing on TNT and like all that stuff. And yeah, listen, it's a great comeback story, especially because he missed a whole year because of foot problems. And basically that injury has essentially derailed his career, because he really hasn't been the same since that happened, unfortunately. So to see he got obviously got a chance. He was playing last year, Phoenix and Brooklyn, and then just was wondering where's the next chance coming from, if one is coming at all.
Right.
This is his 10th year in the league now.
He's only 30 though.
He's only 30. Yep. Yeah, he's only 30 years old, so he's got something left in the
younger
tank.
than Kyle Anderson, like I don't think of Kyle Anderson as like washed. I mean, he's got his own unique sort of game, but like, or younger than Rudy Gobert, I'm pretty sure. Like, I think it was in your story. It was like TJ Warren, 30,
exactly.
Like, he's 30, like,
30,
which suggests like the idea that this, this isn't just like some old vet that you're trying to squeeze the last drops out of necessarily. Right. There's a chance that this could be a rest of season contract, and there's even Finch is clearly taking a liking to him. They've been playing him since he got here. Like maybe this, a player we wouldn't have thought of at all when we were all hyper focused on Marcus Morris and all that sort of stuff. Like,
right.
They went and found the type of player that they thought was best for this team, and he's
just somebody who could score potentially.
Dude, I mean, it's
roll
like
the dice,
It's kind of like he's bench Ant, which how many different players have failed in that role? Shake Milton, Jalen Noel, they just haven't had that guy who can just kind of be second unit, 14 minutes a night, and it's like we just need you to put the ball in the basket here a couple times. Be a threat to shoot. We've talked about that with him before, but I'd recommend checking out that piece from Chris. TJ had some genuine. It just must be a crazy thing. Right?
Yeah,
it just must be a crazy life year or two that you go from being TJ Warren to like TJ Warren in the NBA to TJ Warren at home, and he's back, and that's just it's cool that those little stories. I think
it's nice. It's nice when that sort of stuff tends to happen, in the NBA like that. And where a guy can go from that to suddenly playing a decent role for a contending team.
Dude, it kind of reminds me of Nikhil last year, which I know is like outlandish, but it was like this time of year, right? Where it's like, okay, Nikhil's gonna play a little bit, and I mean, none of us were anticipating Nickeil Alexander-Walker, one, to be good, but two, to even like be playing the role that he plays as this like stopper player, right? Like sometimes when these guys are desperate and it is like on their last leg, they really click into more of a role that just helps the team. And I think that seems to be what they're trying to find with TJ Warren, and TJ Warren looks willing to kind of accept what that was. And that reminds me of Nickeil Alexander-Walker from about 12 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, I think we did it, Chris. I think we covered the Saturday game. We knocked it out on a Sunday night. You can sleep in on Monday morning. I'm excited for that.
I'm excited for that too. I did not want to wake up on Monday morning like at 8 a.m. out here and talk to you. No offense. Much prefer that we did this tonight. I could sleep in until I have to go to shoot around tomorrow. It'll be great.
There you go.
Everybody's happy. They don't have a cranky Chris to deal with at shoot around because I had to wake up and record a podcast. So we like that.
We do. A service to all of us having you on the road out there and giving us our Rudy Gobert updates and that sort of thing. Chris will have, I'm more of that from the game. Like we were just speculating on what Rudy's sort of future is in terms of how long this injury is going to be. Like we said, he's listed as questionable, but be following Chris. He'll update everyone on that and maybe sort of get a sense of a timeline maybe after this Utah game about what this is going to look like for Rudy Gobert. But it's another game against the Jazz on Monday night. Lauri Markkanen is questionable to play in that game. If he plays, obviously that's a big change from the group of three rookies that the Jazz started on Saturday night. John Collins will also play. So I wouldn't take this one lightly. It's going to be and Finch always says, right, that he's like, these 2 in a row ones are tough, like because the other team kind of knows you. They tend to be splits one way or the other, and the Wolves could, particularly given that they got to play Denver on Tuesday and a quote unquote schedule loss. It's important to pick up this game on Monday, but Utah is going to have probably a little bit more juice to play with, and the Wolves might have Rudy Gobert. We will see. Again, you're following Chris there. Check out, he's written a bunch of stories on the road this past week on the West Coast. You can find those on StarTribune.com. Also, he's tweeting those out over at his Twitter at Christopher Hine. If you want us on the road to give you updates from the road,
we need you to support the work.
Yeah,
we need you to support the work. Just
and people have been, and people are are subscribing to the Star Tribune, and we're grateful for that, and listening to this podcast and supporting sponsors and all that. Little apples to oranges there, but that's what allows us to do that, because if we didn't have you there on this West Coast trip, there wouldn't be anybody there to be able to get any of these questions answered on the road. So appreciate you doing it on a Sunday night, Chris, and I will see you. You're gonna do the Denver game on Tuesday night?
I'll be there Tuesday night. Yep, I'll be there.
All right, awesome. Well, I will see you then. Next up for me with the show is Jason and I are going to do a pod on Tuesday morning off of the second Jazz game, and then Britt and I will go off of the Nuggets game on Wednesday morning. But until then, he's Chris. You follow him on Twitter at Christopher Hine. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Yeah, until Tuesday morning with Jace. Yeah. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.